Hello friends, and welcome back to the OT130 project. We are commencing the weathering. And apologies, this video is, yes, a little bit delayed. I was at a Russian dacha, where as you can see, I picked up some amazing weathering references. That is going to be a very interesting video, so stay tuned for that. But now back to the project. Okay, let's just recap. When we left off the painting, we actually coated the model in a semi-gloss varnish from Mr. Hobby. It was the Mr. Hobby Super Clear. And the reason we did that is now going to become apparent. We're going to be using a Mr. Color system for the wash procedure. And we're going to be using Mr. Weather and Color Ground Brown, which is a wash. And I say a system in that they are totally compatible. We applied the varnish knowing that this weathering color wash will not have a counter reaction with the paint or with the varnish, and also we can use the specially designed solvent for cleaning up the wash and will have no adverse effects. Please be careful, do not use ordinary Mr. Color thinner or their lacquer varnish because you will destroy all your weathering and paint work. We're going to use a few other things as well. We're actually use some makeup removal pads, which are extremely cheap, and also some of these eyebrow blending sponges. I'm not an expert, but we're going to use them. Those are going to get into the little nooks and crannies of this model. In fact, we're not going to even use any brushes for cleaning this up. We're going to be using a slightly different method. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about that now. Okay, I'm calling this Sludge Wash variant. Back in the day, Sludge Wash was really how we weathered our models. We used to apply the wash in a rather thick coat all over the model and then remove much of it. But we basically filtered and did everything one go. This variant is using a similar principle. The wash that we're using from Mr. Weather and Color is quite a thickish wash. It is very different to what you'll get in the Tamaya type bottles. First of all, there's no application brush. We need to use our own paint brushes, but also the wash is of a little bit thicker consistency. And if you've seen mine and many other videos, you'll see the usual pin wash technique, which is the way that most modelers are doing this nowadays. We're going to be doing something slightly different. As you can see, when we're applying this wash, we're applying it quite thickly and not precisely. And also, if you look again closely, you'll see that the wash is not capillarying. Because I haven't thinned it down, it's going on neat. So it's quite a thick wash. Just a little bit in between what a normal oil wash would be and raw oil paint. It's somewhere in between. And this product is something like an enamel-based product. So it has got this very fine pigment. And it does go into all these little gaps. You can see that where I'm applying this is not only the joins between panels, but also into the deeper recesses of the model. And as we go on and keep on applying, I'm actually going to start outlining the model. More or less sort of a cartoon type drawing. That's the best way I can describe it of applying this wash. We aren't applying it over everything, but we're applying an outline, so we're going to get some of this wash on basically every single panel. Now, why are we doing this? Surprisingly, we're actually going to achieve two things in one go. We're going to achieve what a pin wash would do, which accents details in the recesses and creates the artificial shadows, but also the ground brown color is also going to provide a filter. Okay, now we're going to go on to the cleanup of the model. And as I mentioned before, we're not actually going to even need any paintbrushes for this. We're going to use the makeup cleanup sponge. The first thing to do is to just blot it onto the model and absorb the excess wash. One thing I need to point out to you guys is that I've done this immediately after the application of the wash. Some of it's still damp, in fact, so I've just gone in straight away. The reason I'm doing that is just to show you that you can, basically. You don't need to wait around. You don't need to wait for it to dry for any period. But you can go straight away and go straight into the tidy up and the cleanup of this wash straight away. Now, if you have a look as well at the way that I'm using this removal sponge, I'm actually dragging it down vertically and creating a bit of streaking. So we're not being precise. The wash isn't just defined within the panel lines or these sections of the model. It's getting drawn out and faded all in one go by using this sponge to sort of cover the model. That's the reason we applied it on areas that were not all the time panel lines, but they were the outlines of the vehicle. And in that way, we're creating this overall sort of brown filter effect to the model just using that wash. So we're getting quite a few things done quite quickly. Now, these little eyebrow type blending sponges, let's just call them mini sponges, these are very handy for getting into these smaller areas. When you use that large makeup removal sponge, you have to be careful on models that have got a lot of photo etch or details, as you're likely to break them off. On this model, we've got quite a lot of flat, horizontal, vertical surfaces, so it's really easy to use that. But using the small, detailed sponge, we can get around, remove the extra wash. Okay, now you saw me use this. I haven't used the solvent at this point, but now we're going to. I've left the model, I think, for maybe a period of about 24 hours here, and I've had another look again. And what I'm going to do is tidy up a few panels. So I'm using a small cotton bud. I've dampened it within the cleaning solvent, and I'm just scrubbing over some of the panels, removing wash where maybe I just don't want it, or I want to create a variation or asymmetric weathering. So it's pretty easy. It does come off, and the advantage again of that semi-gloss varnish that was underneath is that you can even do this up to, I think, about 2 days after that wash application. And even when the wash has basically been taken off, you can see the model still has that really nice sheen to it, which is really how vehicles do look. We're not going for a dead flat finish on this one, but I'm going to come on to that a little bit later on the variations in appearances that you can have. And now we're going to go on to the other final step. We're using a fan type brush. This is the material on this brush is like nylon bristles. It's very cheap, and we've dampened it again with the cleaning solution, and now we're just drawing down vertically and creating the initial streaks. So what have we done with that wash? First of all, pin washed. You can see it's all within all the recesses. Secondly, we've got an overall homogeneous filter of brown. Okay, let's start with some mud effects. This is going to be an experiment. Actually, I'm going to pair some products. The first one I look at is Ammo by Mig. This is a Mud and Earth set, so there's 3 bottles of mud products ready to use, and the label says it's a set to recreate mud and splashes effects in any kind of model kit. The thing to note about this product is it is enamel based, so if we need to blend it, if we need to thin it, we need an enamel thinner. That is no detriment to the product itself, it's just the way it's made. Now let's open it up and have a look. We've got this thick mud, which is obviously a mud that you would stick onto something. That's probably the best way I could describe it. It's got quite a nice texture, and I definitely like the colour of this product. It really does look good straight from the bottle. And for this experiment, I'm going to do one side of the model using this out of the bottle product, and the other one I'm going to make up. It's going to be a bit of a variety, just to sort of show you the difference. The product itself, let's just apply it into a little dish, and in order to get it workable, we'll just add a little bit of enamel thinner so it's just easier to apply. And I've modified a paintbrush, cut off the ends of the bristles. It's just going to make it easier for the stippling, because as we apply it onto the model, we need to give it a bit more texture than it already has. The first thing I noticed about this product is it's very smooth. It really does look like wet mud. Now, I think this product was going to come in a lot better on a moving vehicle, and I'm going to go into the sort of differences on this a little bit later on, but it really does look good. I really like, as I said, I mentioned, the colour looks excellent, and application is really easy. It's really simple to stipple this all over the model and build up the effects. With mud, we need to be careful, and I mean careful as in be realistic. If we entirely coat the vehicle mud and that's what you're going for, fine. However, I'm using reference photographs again. I'm after a very, very specific look for this model that's going to become apparent. It's going to tell the story. Now, with this smooth effect and the fact that it basically looks like damp mud, this might not be the product that's suitable for what I'm doing or hoping to recreate. However, I'm stippling on all sides of the vehicle. Also, as you can see, I started off underneath the vehicle. Whenever you're testing a new product, start on a discrete area of the model. It's really a really good piece of advice. Now, the effects build up really quickly. It dries really quickly as well. One thing I forgot to experiment with was using a hairdryer. And also, as you can see on these tracks as well, it's quite simple to remove. I applied a little bit onto the tracks and then went back with a brush, enamel thinner and a cloth and just basically created a bit of a tone there, but not too much. By stippling on, here's the end result. Not too bad actually, it looks pretty good. I really like the colour. But as you can see, the other side of the vehicle is ready for a different effect. So let's go on to that now and I'll explain the differences. Okay, so we've got the other side of the tank. Let's use something different. We're using this Vallejo Brown Earth paste. And yeah, it is really more to do with an art product. It's like a craft paste. It's actually described as a coloured, slightly gritty paste of acrylic resin, pigment and microparticles. And this is, yes, acrylic. And one of the differences that you really notice with this is its texture. It has got this gritty texture, and when you rub it between your hands, you can actually feel these little particles. And as the ammo of Mig product is really a modeler's product, and it was designed for splash type effects, this is really what I would like to use for creating these dry clumps of dusty earth, so mud when it's dried out. I find this really perfect solution. Also, it's cheap and it comes in a big bottle. Now, acrylic products, of course, we're going to use water, and the other products we're going to use is real earth to get that real gritty texture into what we need to build up. The thing that we need to emphasize here is that the build-up of mud really consists of two stages. The first stage is texture. We need to get that texture. And then the second stage is colour, which we'll cover later on. So this brown earth, in fact, I actually hate the colour, and you're going to see how much problems this causes later on for us. But in terms of its texture, it really is a great product. It's very versatile. Now, what I do is I simply mix it up with some water and create this as an adhesive. We've got the microparticles in there. Start stippling it all over the model. And then instead of adding the earth to the mixture, the earth gets stippled on top. That's the way I apply this. So we get this sort of thick clumps of earth embedded into the mud. Now we're coming on to the second part of this, and this is really the most important part. It's the cleanup. And really be careful with your mud. If you go overboard, you lose the realism. What you've got here is basically effects of mud that dried out. Gravity's brought it down and it's gone underneath the areas of the fenders. So what I'm doing is cleaning off the horizontal surfaces which the rain would wash the mud off. It's as simple as that. Just make sure you see that there's not really that much to it. We're going to build up something that looks realistic and in scale, and probably that is the most important thing with this mud effect. Okay, now we need to correct the tones on the underneath. This portion has a very specific tone. And if you ever pull up with a big truck or a very large vehicle at a traffic light, have a look underneath and see that grimy, browny black color. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve under here. The brown that we have from that Vallejo product is terrible. We need to defeat that, and I'm using this product. It's liquid pigments. Just because it's out of the bottle, it isn't totally opaque. We still need a little bit of that background, and this stuff is really, really easy to apply. So we can just go straight from the bottle. And my favorite colors at the moment seem to be this black umber and the burned olive green. We can stipple them on and we can wet blend them. We can do everything with them. So application is very simple. dipping the brush straight into the mixed up bottle and start blotting it on. And as you can see, because we've got that texture, it sort of absorbs the paint, and we start to build this up. It's going to take a couple of layers, but after a while, that terrible brown is gone and we're replaced with this deep dark color, that filth that seems to be also evident in that area underneath the fenders. When that's done, we can go back to it later on. So this is our first tone. Now let's go on to the tracks. So continuing, we're using pigments now. We're going to mix up two pigments, a light rust tone and a dark rust tone. Vary your pigments and you can get better effects. You also want contrast with your weathering washes. So we added enamel thinner now into this mixture, and now we've got like a paste type solution that can be both sort of washed into these areas. I don't apply these pigments dry, so we can apply them into the tracks themselves, and we build up not only a tone, but we also get a texture layer out of this pigment. And let's also hit that exhaust and the other rusted sort of components. We're starting on another layer now on top of what we've already accomplished. Let's start the washes now. We're going to start off with some localized washes. I'm going to start off with the rust washes. But I combine rust with dirt at the same time. So I mix together this industrial earth tone, which is just a really incredible tone for that dirty earth. It's really difficult to describe, but it looks excellent. And also we've got this light rust tone, both from Absalom oils. We mix them as usual with a thinner, or basically you can use white spirit. But anyways, just the solvent to make a mixture. We obviously don't apply these neat. We need these to flow and to act like a wash. The reason we use oils is their translucent properties. So we've already got several layers now. We've got texture, and also we've already got that pigment tone down. Now we're going to go on top of that and reinforce those tones and really create that rusty track look, as if the tracks haven't been in motion for quite some time. So it was quite deliberate that we didn't put mud into them, and it's quite deliberate that we're not going to create any sort of like shiny type effects on them or indications that they've recently been running. So let's emphasize areas of the tracks. Also at the same time, we're going to go back to the areas of corrosion we've got on the vehicle, so the large paint chips and also the exhaust. So we're building up all the layers in conjunction with one another. That way we've got a continuity or a homogeneous type effect. So nothing looks really too out of place. So the rust tones are in combination everywhere. There's nothing that's really jumping out or contrasting too much. So we've got this multi-layers sort of building up and building up. After we've completed the rust layers, we can let it dry basically for about an hour or two. I'm starting to use a hairdryer more and more. By using these enamel thinners or these quick drying thinners, we're quicker to go back, and we can go back with the next layers. I read this somewhere. Rust and dust go together. They just sort of don't seem to be apart. It's probably not reality. In fact, it's not. But in terms of scale modeling, it really does look awesome, because we can build up now a layer of dust on top of the rust. Goddamn rhyming slam. Okay, anyways, what we're doing here is we're sort of matting down the rust as if dirt had somehow basically washed on top of it, which is really what does happen in nature. And also we get this absolutely wonderful series of tones. And again, now, because we have that area underneath the hole that's been dominated by rust effects, when we go back with the dust, it sort of helps explain the fact that there's a texture there of dirt, and it also explains why there's dirt on the running gear, on that lower running gear section of the track. So it isn't totally like as if the vehicle was left there decrepit and abandoned. It's basically been left there maybe a season or so, and weather has got to it. And at the same time, again, now we go back to the exhaust again. We add a layer on there, and also let's hit a random layer on the vehicle as well, just get some rust. There isn't going to be much dust on top of the vehicle because rain will have surely worn that off, but maybe in a random area too, there might be, and we're going to cover that in another video anyways. Okay, let's emphasize some deeper corrosion effects. This is an original bottle of the Mig Productions Light Rust Effects. I think I purchased this maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. As you can see, there's still plenty of the product left. And unique in that this one actually comes with a warning. Yes, this is really designed for abandoned vehicles. If you use this product a little bit too much, you're going to create a rather strange appearance to your vehicle. The idea is this is extremely corroded metal. I mean, we're like sort of paper thin metal, or areas that have had a different type of effect. It is that very light rust tone. So we need to be very sparing with this, and I mean very sparing. So we're using minute quantities. As you can see, I tend to use just the bottle cap and just take the product out of there. It's like a sort of pigment, I think, really in a solution. And really, we're very careful in its application, just going in for some select areas, maybe the guide teeth, and an area of the exhaust that's been subject to maybe a little bit more exposure to the elements. So really, as you can see, I've applied it as a wash into the track areas, just carefully, not overall, but you know, in quite a controlled manner. In the end, we've got these contrasted areas of extreme corrosion, again emphasizing the fact that the vehicle has not moved for some time. And here we go again with the dust. I think one thing about weathering that needs to be understood is that it's not a continual sort of like 1, 2, 3 process. There's a bit of back and forth. And here, after looking at the vehicle, I want to emphasize those dust clumps on the running gear. So I'm building up nearly like triangular type shapes of extra dust by using this other light dust tone. And then it's just a matter of reapplication. So we're just going back, re-emphasizing, building up another layer. And you can see that the translucency of the wash is such that we don't obliterate what was behind there. So we've still got a tone there. It's just a little bit slightly more opaque. And in that way, slightly more realistic in my opinion. So let's round off this video now. I need to stretch this into another episode because we had so much to cover in this one. And really, I'll be coming back to explain a simpler way of achieving this. But as you can see, look at the different patinas, look at the different tones that we've achieved. There's a lot of variety in there, a lot of interest, saturation of colour, and everything seems to be harmonious because by using those layers, we build up the effects in the way nature acts. So we have a layer of dirt, we have some rust, we have some more dust, we have rain washing it away. Really, that's what weathering is. It's not a science, it's just the way the world works. And again, we should use our reference photographs for the appearance that we're going for. I'm going to cover that in the next video. I hope you enjoy this one. I'll be interested in your comments. Yes, you can critique me. Yes, you can come back. I will respond to you. I think it's a two-way process. If you don't understand why I'm doing something, again, raise the point and I'll try and explain to you. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you at the same time next week to complete this model.